Okay, so this page is pretty good at telling us about what's going on for a particular meal. However, we may have very engaged users and not so engaged users, passively engaged users. Passively engaged users may find this to be, the most valuable page. They get some insight on a particular meal, what it does or does not support, and they, find something else for the day that's high in calcium, high in fiber, and they move on. But we may also have some more detailed users. We have to remember that this app is for parents, and parents are very engaged in their, most parents are very engaged in their children's success, and we are directly correlating the things that we're tracking to things that parents care about, right? The child's ability to control their emotions or control their impulses, their ability to think, their ability to remember, right? So some parents may say that if this is based on daily values, I'm glad that we did well on choline for breakfast, right, or for lunch, but I want to make sure they get 100% on this so that choline can do its job when it comes to memory and mood stability, and I want to make sure that they get 100% on everything because I want to give my child the best possible shot as they grow up. So we probably need to consider having a day mode, whereas this is a meal, or we do have daily nutrient summary. This is something that Claude kind of stuck in here, but this needs to probably be changed on this page to meal nutrient summary or meal summary, because this is just for one meal. The point that I'm making is that we need a summary for the day as well, and it doesn't need to be overly complicated. It doesn't need to look too different. It probably needs to share the same information just for daily value, so parents recognize that they're either closing gaps or which gaps they're not closing or close to closing, and then our recommendations might even be a little bit more accurate, given if we do have an engaged parent who wants to, on a particular day, probably not every day, but on a particular day, scan 3 meals or type in 3 meals just to get us a feel for how well their common preparations do for the child's nutritional needs. We probably need to have a day version of this. So I've written a prompt over here. Okay, for Brain Sprout 2, I also split this into 2 pages, right? So we have the same thing. It's identical over here. Let me untoggle this in our mock-up. So this is basically the same thing. Brain Sprout 2. Brain Sprout 2 is going to be our day page. We're operating from the same premise. And for Brain Sprout 2, let's make a version of the app where daily nutrient summary, and that should be meal nutrient summary, but we'll just go with it for now. Daily nutrient summary section is set up differently. This section should be split into 2 sections that are horizontally aligned. And just a reminder, this daily nutrient summary for a day mode, like we're talking about, the new thing that we're adding, this is the perfect title for that, right? It's probably going to be shorter in production, but this is a good title. So the meal nutrient summary is going to go on, the other page, which is staying exactly the same because this is just for a meal. So just want to make that point to be clear. Daily nutrient summary section is set up differently. The section should be split into 2 sections that are horizontally aligned. The left section should be 35% of the width of the daily nutrient summary, right? So 35% of the width, somewhere in here, of the daily nutrient summary. The right section is going to be 65% of the width of the daily nutrient summary. And the left side will be a 2x4 grid of our same circular gauges. Above them is a header that says day value. And that's, in our 35% width section. So imagine these day gauges vertically with something that says day value on top. And the right section will be split into 3 vertical parts. Each vertical part represents a meal. So the right section, which is wider, is going to have breakfast, lunch, dinner. Each vertical part has an empty mode and a scan mode. In empty mode, each vertical part has 2 buttons, scan and type. And when a parent scans, for instance, breakfast, we see the picture for breakfast pop up here. The the ingredients that we detected, and we have the same thing for lunch and dinner. Ultimately, the gauges are scanned. Ultimately, the gauges on this page, or in our what is now our on daily nutrient summary, will now show a rolling total for the day of our nutrients for the day. So ultimately, the circular gauges on daily nutrient summary will now show that for the day. So I think that's a clear description for Claude. We're going to prompt and come back when we get a response. Okay, so our prompt completed its work in Claude Design, and we have a new tab here for our day tracking that allows us to look at, recognize our nutrient values cumulatively for the day, and for us to log each meal. The AI is going to recognize the items in the meal, and we'll talk a little bit about how the Lambda is constructed to do that. But the AI is going to spit out, we recognize oats, Greek yogurt, blueberries, almonds here, chicken, orzo, spinach. And what happens is, cumulatively, right, when I scan breakfast, I see where breakfast put us. These are not real numbers, or these are not real levels. I can actually change these for the sake of the app. Then lunch, then dinner, and so on and so forth. So in actuality, based on the numbers that I've seen for each of these meals, this combination would actually measure up pretty well. So we would be looking at something like this. Calcium might still be a little bit low, and choline would be higher, but let's assume B vitamins would be all the way. Let's assume that iodine and calcium are low. Let's see here, we need our omega-3 is higher because we have this. And so what we have is a snapshot of the day, things to catch up on. These can either be a carousel, or we can wrap this text for the first line so that we have emotional control and gait on one line. This vertical component here would be shorter and more flush. But the point is, I get a snapshot for the day based on my day scanning if I am an engaged user. And then, of course, our hex map at the bottom here is going to show us intuitively where we're weak, what we need to catch up on. It's the same things we called out here, but it shows us that everything else is in green, and everything else that these nutrients impact memory, gait, aka coordination, mood, emotional control, cognitive speed. For the nutrients that are green, they're all contributing, mostly green here. But iodine and calcium need to be caught up on, and those represent yellow, and that yellow, of course, bleeds into the outcomes, cognitive speed, emotional control, and coordination, aka gait, here. So it kind of gives the parents a good at-a-glance feel for how they did. And over time, the idea is that they'll learn, right? They'll figure out, every time I serve this breakfast, iodine is low, and I need to supplement it with something. Or, this meal is great, something else that I used to serve at lunch was not so great, or that I used to serve at dinner was not so great for whatever reasons. So this is good. The next question then becomes, how do we make recommendations, right? If we tell parents there's a problem, even if it's a big problem or a little problem, if it's red or yellow, or if it's a lot of these or a little or a small number of these, parents are going to say, okay, well, how do I fix it, right? And how can you tell me to fix it in a way that's very easy and intuitive to understand, digest, and it, of course, makes sense for my lifestyle, right? Miso paste might be the perfect iodine substitute or item, but what parents are going to know where to find miso paste, what kids are going to want to eat. Maybe they don't like that texture or flavor profile. So the next step is going to be recommendations, and finding the best way to present those and finding the best recommendations. But I would say that having a proposition of both a meal page, so you can scan a meal and get your data on that. And of course, these gauges would be empty until we actually scan the meal. But this is a mock-up. All of this information would be empty in an empty state until we actually scan a meal. But the point is having a meal summary here and having a day summary here that allows us to scan. And of course, if we don't want to scan, like let's say, it's the end of the day, and I don't have a photo of, I forgot to scan, or I just didn't have time to scan. Of course, we also have the capacity to type, right? So there would be a page that says, just type the ingredients in. What did you have for lunch? And we have, sorry, let me unlock the bottom piece here. Yeah, and then we have our day summary. Together, I think this is a compelling value proposition to parents. Still some questions on presentation on exactly how we're doing this, but we're in a stronger position than we were before, and that's why we're here. Okay, and just a quick add-on here to the previous discussion. I actually did make a change where this is going to now be inline always. If there is a 2-line outcome here, like emotional control, it will show as wrap text. So emotional over control, and we always have space for a second. If you've had a miserable day as far as food, and you've got 3 outcomes here that, 3 or more outcomes that are at risk because you're not eating or the child is not eating well, this will carousel. So we'll have memory gate and also cognitive speed and also emotional control, and the nutrients that are contributing will cycle as well. So just a quick add, it doesn't seem like a significant change, but again, we want this page to be one look and everything is available, everything is there. After you come into the page the first time and you orient yourself, you do not need to scroll to get relevant information. So that's going to help us when it comes to that. Of course, I'll be able to toggle between this page, this day view, and this meal specific view, right? I did not. This is a toggle that I had from earlier. You'll be able to do that, right? And that's great. Again, the next challenge is going to be recommendations, and it always keeps this toggle. The next challenge is going to be recommendations, and we also need to think about, with these particular, sorry, that's not hooked up yet, but with these particular, this red connotation feels like a lot. We don't want the parents to feel like we're telling them that they're failing, which people can take it that way. So again, we have to rethink the approach. We have to keep rethinking, reiterating the approach, but I think we're in a good place.